Rich daughter abandons mother in nursing home. 10 years later, mother shows up at daughter's wedding with documents that change everything. Charlotte Eldridge stood in front of the expansive mirror, her reflection staring back at her with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The luxurious bridal boutique was filled with the soft rustle of satin and the sweet scent of fresh flowers. But all she could feel was the weight of the past pressing heavily on her chest. The ivory gown she wore hugged her curves perfectly, but the beauty of the dress did little to quell the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "It's stunning," her friend Lily exclaimed, spinning around to admire Charlotte's figure. "You look like a princess. Nathaniel won't be able to take his eyes off you." Charlotte forced a smile, running her fingers over the intricate lace detailing. "Thanks, Lily. It feels like there's something missing." "Missing? What do you mean?" Lily furrowed her brow, concern etched on her features. Charlotte hesitated, her gaze drifting to the ornate ceiling. "I don't know. It's just, my mom isn't here. I mean, she hasn't been a part of my life for so long." The words hung in the air, a heavy admission that seemed to crack the veneer of her excitement. Lily's expression softened. "I know you've been through so much, Char, but you're starting a new chapter with Nathaniel. He loves you, and you deserve to be happy." "Do I?" Charlotte whispered, her voice barely audible. She remembered the day she made the decision that had changed everything, the day she signed the papers to admit her mother, Agnes, to the nursing home. The memory was seared into her mind, a painful reminder of the choice that still haunted her. In her mind, a flashback unfolded, pulling her back to that fateful day 10 years ago. Charlotte was a young woman then, barely in her 20s, standing in a sterile room filled with the scent of antiseptic. Agnes sat in a chair, her once bright eyes clouded with confusion and hurt. The walls were painted a sterile white, and the only sound was the ticking of a clock that seemed to mock the gravity of the moment. "Are you sure about this, Charlotte?" Agnes had asked, her voice trembling. "I don't want to be here. I want to go home." Charlotte felt her heart shatter at her mother's words. "Mom, this is for your own good. You need care that I can't provide. It's too much for me right now." "But I'm your mother." Agnes's voice rose, filled with desperation. "You can't just leave me here." "I have to, Mom," Charlotte snapped, the frustration boiling over. She quickly regretted it, seeing the hurt flash across her mother's face. "I don't want to, but I can't take care of you alone. I'm not ready for this." Agnes's silence was deafening, and the disappointment in her eyes was something Charlotte would carry with her for years. The moment marked the beginning of a chasm between them, a divide that had never seemed to close. "Charlotte," Lily's voice broke through her reverie, and she blinked, returning to the present. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I need a moment," Charlotte replied, taking a deep breath and stepping away from the mirror. She could feel the tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Today was supposed to be a joyous occasion, not a day filled with regret. As she changed into her regular clothes, Charlotte's mind wandered again. In the days leading up to her wedding, she had noticed unsettling feelings creeping in, like shadows lurking at the edges of her happiness. It was as if the universe was conspiring to remind her of the ghosts of her past. She had received an anonymous letter a few days ago, its handwriting eerily familiar. The words had cut through her like a knife, confronting her about her decision to leave Agnes in the nursing home. "Charlotte, you can't just pretend everything is fine. You left her," the letter had read. "What kind of daughter abandons her mother?" Each time she reread the note, the guilt twisted in her stomach, making her feel sick. Who had sent it? She couldn't shake the feeling that it was someone who knew her story all too well. The letter had ignited a fire in her, urging her to confront her past rather than bury it beneath the excitement of her upcoming wedding. "Charlotte, are you sure you want to go through with this?" Lily asked, an edge of concern in her voice. "You haven't seemed yourself lately." "I'm fine," Charlotte replied, a little too quickly. It's just wedding nerves, you know? Lily raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. You've been acting distant. It's like you're here but not really here. Charlotte sighed, running a hand through her hair. I can't shake the feeling that I'm making a huge mistake. I thought planning my wedding would be the most exciting time of my life, but instead, it's like I'm just going through the motions. Maybe you should talk to Nathaniel about it, Lily suggested gently. He loves you. He'll understand if you're feeling overwhelmed. Yeah, maybe, Charlotte said, but the thought of opening up about her insecurities filled her with dread. Nathaniel had always been her rock, but she feared that if she revealed her vulnerability, it might change the way he saw her. As Charlotte finished dressing, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror again. The woman staring back at her was a stranger, one filled with doubt and regret. You can do this, she whispered to herself. But deep down, she knew that the wedding was only the surface of a much deeper struggle. With a heavy heart, she left the boutique, her mind swirling with thoughts of Agnes. The image of her mother's face, filled with confusion and disappointment, haunted her. What would have happened if she had made a different choice? Would things be different between them? The question spiraled in her mind like a relentless storm. As she stepped outside into the bustling streets of New York, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The air was crisp, and the sounds of the city buzzed around her. But all she could think about was her mother and the decision that had led her here. The weight of her past felt like a chain around her neck, pulling her down. Charlotte, wait, Lily called, running to catch up with her. Are you sure you're okay? I don't know, Lily, Charlotte confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I feel like I'm about to step into the biggest mistake of my life. Lily placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this. Just talk to Nathaniel. You need to be honest with him about how you feel. Charlotte nodded, though uncertainty still gnawed at her. Perhaps confronting her past and acknowledging her feelings was the first step toward healing. Maybe this wedding wasn't just about her future with Nathaniel. It was also about facing the ghost that had loomed over her for so long. As they walked through the streets, Charlotte's mind raced with possibilities. She couldn't change the past, but perhaps she could take control of her future. It was time to confront the choices she had made and the pain they had caused. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, but she knew deep down that she had to do it. Lily, I need to visit my mom, Charlotte said suddenly, her voice steadying with newfound resolve. What? Now? But your wedding is in just a few days, Lily exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. I know, but I can't go through with this until I at least try to make things right with her. I owe her that much, Charlotte replied, her heart racing with determination. Okay, let's do it, Lily said, her support unwavering. Just remember, it's okay to feel scared. You're taking a big step. Charlotte nodded, feeling a flicker of hope igniting within her. As they made their way to the nursing home, she couldn't help but wonder what awaited her on the other side of that door. Would Agnes be willing to listen? Would they find a way to bridge the chasm that had formed between them? With each step, Charlotte felt the weight of her past lifting just a little, replaced by the possibility of healing and reconciliation. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally taking control of her life. And maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to forgive herself and her mother before walking down the aisle. Charlotte sat in her elegantly decorated apartment in Manhattan, the sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains and casting soft shadows on the plush carpet. The faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but today, it did little to soothe her frayed nerves. She held a letter, its edges slightly crumpled from her anxious grip, the words etched in familiar handwriting, sending a chill down her spine. It was a letter that echoed with the memories she had tried so hard to bury. As she reread the words, her heart raced. The letter was an anonymous confrontation, a scathing reminder of the choice she had made a decade ago, the choice to abandon her mother, Agnes, in a nursing home. The writer had skillfully tapped into the guilt that had wormed its way into Charlotte's life, a guilt that she had masked with her success and wealth. You left her there, Charlotte. You chose your life over hers. It read, the words piercing through her defenses. Charlotte's eyes stung with tears, and she tossed the letter aside, burying her face in her hands. Char, are you okay? Nathaniel's voice broke through her spiral of despair. He stepped into the living room, his brow furrowed with concern. You've been so distant lately. I know the wedding is a big deal, but you seem lost. I'm fine, she replied too quickly, avoiding his gaze. She didn't want to burden him with her turmoil, especially not now. Just days before their wedding. Just a little stressed, I guess. Nathaniel approached her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You don't have to pretend with me. We're in this together, remember? If something's bothering you, let me help. Charlotte forced a smile, grateful for his support, but also painfully aware that her issues were rooted in her past. I appreciate it, but I really just need to get through this week. Once the wedding is behind us, I'll feel better. He nodded, though skepticism lingered in his eyes. Okay, but promise me you'll talk to me if it gets too much. I want us to start our life together without any shadows looming over us. I promise, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As he left the room, Charlotte felt a surge of guilt. She was keeping secrets from the man she loved, secrets that had clung to her like a heavy fog. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of preparations. But in the quiet moments, when she was alone, the weight of her past loomed larger. That night, lying in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her stomach. The letter had triggered memories of the day she signed her mother's admission papers at the nursing home, a day that still haunted her dreams. Charlotte recalled the sharp smell of antiseptic in the air as she walked into the sterile, fluorescent-lit room, her heart pounding. Agnes sat on the edge of the bed, her frail form shrouded in a hospital gown that did little to conceal her vulnerability. The confusion in her mother's eyes pierced Charlotte's heart, but she had convinced herself that this was the best choice, one she had to make for her own future. Charlotte, please don't do this, Agnes had pleaded, her voice trembling. I don't belong here. I can take care of myself. I know, Mom, Charlotte had replied, her voice cracking under the pressure of her emotions. But you need help. I can't do this alone. I have my life to think about. Agnes had looked at her then, a mix of sorrow and disappointment etched into her features. You're choosing this life over me? Charlotte had felt her heart shatter, but she had nodded, forcing herself to be resolute. I have to think about my future. I can't be your caretaker anymore. The memory faded, replaced by the stark reality of her decision. She had walked out of that room, her mother's cries echoing in her ears, and had not looked back. It had been easier to forget, to immerse herself in her career and her soon-to-be marriage, but the guilt remained like a shadow, lurking just out of sight. Desperate for clarity, Charlotte sought therapy. It was a step she had avoided for years, but the burden of her past was becoming too heavy to carry alone. On her first visit, she met Lisa, a kind woman with warm eyes and an understanding smile. They sat across from each other in a cozy office decorated with soft colors and calming artwork. Tell me what brings you here, Charlotte, Lisa prompted gently, her voice soothing. I don't know where to start, Charlotte admitted, fidgeting with her hands. I've been feeling so lost. I'm getting married soon, but I can't stop thinking about my mother. I left her in a nursing home, and I feel like a terrible person for it. Lisa nodded, her expression empathetic. That sounds incredibly difficult. It's understandable that you're wrestling with those feelings, especially with such a significant life event approaching. I just thought I was doing the right thing, Charlotte said, her voice trembling. But now, I keep wondering if I made a huge mistake. It's like this guilt is eating me alive. Guilt often has a way of creeping into our lives, especially when we feel we've let someone down, Lisa replied. Have you thought about why you made that decision? What was going on in your life at that time? Charlotte took a deep breath, the memories flooding back. I was overwhelmed. I had just started my career, and I felt like I was drowning. I thought I could come back for her later, but I never did. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Lisa reassured her. But it's important to recognize the impact of those choices on both you and your mother. Healing starts with acknowledging the past and understanding how it shapes us. Charlotte nodded slowly, the weight of her past beginning to feel a little lighter in the presence of someone who truly listened. I want to confront my past, but I'm terrified of what I'll find. Facing our fears can be daunting, but it's often where we find the greatest growth, Lisa encouraged. What if you took a small step, perhaps researching the nursing home where your mother is? Knowing her current situation might help you feel more in control. Charlotte considered this, the idea both terrifying and liberating. I could look into it. I guess I need to know if she's okay. As the days passed, Charlotte felt a growing resolve to confront her past. She hesitated, though. The thought of facing Agnes and the consequences of her actions was daunting, but she knew it was a necessary step if she wanted to move forward. One evening, as she sat in her apartment, she finally gathered the courage to make the call. Her heart raced as she dialed the number of the nursing home, each ring echoing her apprehension. A voice on the other end answered, and she forced herself to speak. "Hi, I'm calling to inquire about a resident, Agnes Eldridge," Charlotte stammered, her hands clammy. "Of course. Let me pull up her file," the receptionist replied. "One moment, please." Charlotte held her breath, anxiety coursing through her veins. After what felt like an eternity, the receptionist returned. "Yes, Ms. Eldridge is still with us. She's doing as well as can be expected. Would you like to speak with her, or perhaps schedule a visit?" Charlotte felt a wave of relief mixed with dread. I would like to visit her. Can I do that?" "Absolutely. We can arrange a visit for you," the receptionist said warmly. After hanging up, Charlotte felt a mix of emotions. There was a sense of relief that she was taking action, but also an overwhelming fear of confronting her mother after all this time. She knew that whatever lay ahead would require a depth of courage she wasn't sure she possessed. That night, as she lay in bed, Charlotte reflected on her relationship with Nathaniel. She thought of his unwavering support and kindness, and a pang of guilt washed over her. How could she fully commit to him without first reconciling with her past? She had to confront her mother not just for Agnes, but for herself. In the days that followed, she found herself spiraling into a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The wedding was just around the corner, and yet all she could think about was her impending visit with Agnes. In the moments she spent with Nathaniel, she felt a lingering sense of disconnect. He would often ask her how she was feeling, and each time she would deflect, masking her turmoil with forced smiles and reassurances. Yet deep down, Charlotte knew that the confrontation with her mother was not just an obligation. It was a chance for redemption, a chance to uncover the pieces of her heart that had been buried under layers of guilt. She had to face Agnes not just to seek forgiveness, but to begin the healing process for both of them. As the wedding day drew closer, Charlotte felt the weight of her unspoken secrets pressing down on her. She couldn't allow the past to overshadow what was supposed to be her happiest day. She had to confront her fears and, in doing so, reclaim her future. Charlotte stood in the middle of her opulent bedroom, her heart heavy with the weight of her past. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting a warm glow on the delicate lace of her wedding dress. It was a breathtaking gown, a symbol of the new life she was about to embark on with Nathaniel. Yet, as she admired her reflection in the full-length mirror, the image of her mother, Agnes, lingered in her mind like a ghost. The memories of that fateful day 10 years ago, when she had signed the papers that led to her mother's interment in the nursing home, clawed at her conscience. "Charlotte, are you ready?" Nathaniel's voice called from the living room, filled with a mix of excitement and concern that made her stomach twist. She forced a smile and replied, "Just a minute." But her heart wasn't in it. She felt like an imposter in her own life. draped in silk and satin while her mind wandered back to the cold, sterile walls of the asylum where she had left Agnes. In the days leading up to the wedding, Charlotte had been a bundle of nerves. She had tried to focus on the upcoming celebration, but a letter had arrived that rattled her. The handwriting was familiar, yet the sender was unknown. It simply read, "You must confront your past before you can embrace your future." The words echoed in her mind, haunting her at every turn. Who could have sent it? Was it someone from her past, or perhaps even her mother? As she paced the room, lost in thought, she remembered the conversation she had had with Nathaniel the previous night. He had noticed her distance and had tried to reach out. "Charlotte, I can't help you if you don't talk to me. You seem off. Is it about your mother?" he had asked gently, concern etched across his handsome features. "I'm fine, Nathaniel. I really am," she had insisted, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Nathaniel had looked unconvinced, and she had felt a pang of guilt for shutting him out. Now, as she stood alone in her room, she realized that she needed to confront the feelings that had been bubbling beneath the surface for so long. With a deep breath, she sat down at her vanity, the weight of the letter heavy in her hands. She could no longer ignore the truth that had been gnawing at her. Her decision to leave Agnes had not only broken her mother's heart, it had shattered her own. Determined to find clarity, Charlotte had decided to seek therapy. It was, "To make this right, can we try to rebuild what we lost?" Agnes studied her for a moment, her gaze penetrating. "It won't be easy, you know. Trust takes time." "I know," Charlotte replied earnestly. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you again." As they spoke, a sense of understanding began to blossom, fragile yet promising. Charlotte could feel the walls of resentment starting to crumble, replaced by a shared desire for reconciliation. "I've been working on forgiving you," Agnes said quietly. "It's a process, but I believe we can get there." Charlotte took a deep breath, the weight of her guilt slowly lifting. "Thank you, Mom. I'll do everything I can to earn your trust back." After what felt like hours of cathartic conversation, Charlotte stood to leave, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "I have to go now, but I'll be back, I promise," she vowed. Agnes reached out, grasping Charlotte's hand gently. "I'll be here waiting." As Charlotte turned to leave, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced her past, and while the journey ahead would be challenging, the possibility of rebuilding her relationship with her mother filled her with hope. On the drive back, Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling of transformation that had taken place. She knew she had to confront her own insecurities and fears, and she was ready to embrace the future, whatever it might hold. When she arrived home, Nathaniel was waiting for her, concern etched across his features. "Charlotte, I was worried. What happened?" With tears in her eyes and a newfound strength, Charlotte took his hands in hers. "I saw my mother. I'm ready to face everything, Nathaniel. I want to be honest about my past. I need you to support me through this." Nathaniel's gaze softened, and he nodded earnestly. "I'm here for you always. We'll face this together." In that moment, surrounded by love and understanding, Charlotte felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to walk it, hand in hand with Nathaniel and perhaps, one day, alongside her mother. The journey toward healing had begun, and she was determined to see it through. The day of Charlotte Eldridge's wedding dawned bright and beautiful, the sun casting a golden glow over the bustling streets of New York City. Inside the opulent ballroom where her ceremony was set to take place, the atmosphere was filled with excitement and anticipation. Guests mingled and gushed about the extravagant decorations, while Charlotte, in a private suite, stood before the mirror, her heart heavy despite the lavishness surrounding her. Charlotte admired the intricate lace of her wedding gown, the way it hugged her figure perfectly. Yet, as she turned to catch a glimpse from another angle, she caught sight of the uncertainty reflected in her eyes. Her mind drifted back to the day she made the heart-wrenching decision to leave her mother, Agnes, at the nursing home. The memory played in her mind like an unbearable film scene of betrayal that had haunted her for a decade. "Charlotte, you look stunning," her best friend Mia chimed in, bursting into the room with a bright smile. "Are you ready to marry the love of your life?" "Thanks, Mia," Charlotte replied, forcing a smile as she turned to face her friend. I don't know. I keep thinking about Mom." Mia's expression softened. "I know it's a lot to process, but today is supposed to be about you and Nathaniel. Try to focus on that." Charlotte nodded, but her heart felt like a weight in her chest. In the back of her mind, the memory of signing the papers to admit her mother into the nursing home loomed like a dark cloud. She had been so convinced it was the right choice, believing that Agnes would receive better care than she could provide. But deep down, guilt twisted inside her, a reminder of the love she had severed. As Charlotte slipped into her heels, she caught a glimpse of the elegant necklace Nathaniel had given her as a wedding gift. It was a beautiful piece, a family heirloom, he had told her. Yet, instead of feeling joy, she felt a pang of sadness. The necklace, while stunning, felt like a reminder of the family she had left behind. "Charlotte, are you sure you're okay?" Nathaniel's voice, rich and warm, broke through her thoughts as he entered the room. His eyes searched hers, concern etched on his handsome face. "You've seemed a bit distant today." "I'm fine," she insisted, a little too quickly. "I'm just nervous, I guess." He stepped closer, reaching out to caress her cheek. "I get it, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever you're feeling, you can tell me." Charlotte felt a flicker of warmth from his touch, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memories of her past. I keep thinking about my mom and how I left her all those years ago. It doesn't feel right to just move on without addressing it." Nathaniel's brows knitted together. "You've been through so much, Charlotte. You don't have to carry that weight alone. You have a lifetime ahead of you now. Focus on what's to come." She looked at him, her heart aching. "You're right. I want to focus on us, but I can't help feeling like I'm leaving a part of myself behind." "Maybe it's time to face that part of yourself," he suggested gently. "You're marrying me today, and I want you to be whole. Take a moment for yourself if you need it." Charlotte inhaled deeply, appreciating his understanding, yet feeling the pressure of her decisions weighing heavier than ever. She nodded slowly, her mind racing. "Maybe I'll take a quick walk outside, just to clear my head." "Okay," Nathaniel replied, his voice laced with concern. "Just don't take too long. The ceremony starts soon." As she stepped outside, the cool breeze felt refreshing against her skin, but her thoughts were anything but calm. She walked along the elegant marble pathway, her heels clicking against the ground. The vibrant flowers lining the path swayed gently, but all she could think about was the letter she had received days before. The anonymous note that had shaken her to her core, confronting her about abandoning her mother. The familiar handwriting had struck her like a lightning bolt, though she couldn't place it. "Why now?" she whispered to herself, her heart racing. "Why did I get that letter before my wedding?" As she wandered further away from the venue, she found solace in the park nearby, where the sounds of laughter and celebration faded into the background. She sat on a bench, gripping her bouquet tightly with trembling hands. The weight of her past felt suffocating, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the precipice of a revelation that would change everything. Suddenly, her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her back to reality. It was a message from Lisa, her therapist. Remember, Charlotte, facing your fears is the first step toward healing. Don't shy away from what you need to confront. Charlotte stared at the message, tears welling up in her eyes. She had been trying to convince herself that everything would be perfect, that marrying Nathaniel would erase the guilt and pain of her past. But maybe Lisa was right. Maybe it was time to confront the demons she had buried so deep. Taking a deep breath, she stood up, determination coursing through her veins. She returned to the venue, where the sounds of joyous preparations filled the air. As she approached the grand entrance, she caught a glimpse of Nathaniel standing by the door, his expression a mixture of hope and concern. "There you are," he exclaimed, relief flooding his features. "I was starting to worry. I needed a moment," she said softly, her heart racing. "But I'm okay now. I need to talk to you about something important." He nodded, his expression serious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Charlotte hesitated, the weight of her confessions heavy in her throat. "I just feel like I'm not ready to fully commit to this without addressing my past. I need to confront my mother. I can't keep running away from it." Nathaniel's face softened and he stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Then let's do it together. Whatever it takes, I'm here for you." His words washed over her like a warm wave, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this journey wouldn't have to be taken alone, perhaps with Nathaniel by her side. She could find the strength to face Agnes and the past she had tried so hard to forget. "Thank you," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I just want to make things right." As they turned to rejoin the festivities, Charlotte felt a renewed sense of purpose. The ceremony was about to begin, and while she still felt the weight of her past, she also felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps today could be the beginning of a new chapter, one where she could reconcile her past with her future. Hand in hand, they walked back into the ballroom. The grandeur of the decor sparkled in the soft light, and the guests were buzzing with excitement. Charlotte took a deep breath, preparing herself for the challenges ahead. She might not have all the answers yet, but she was ready to face whatever was waiting for her. Today was just the beginning. As the ceremony unfolded in the opulent ballroom, adorned with crystal chandeliers and elegant floral arrangements, Charlotte stood at the altar, her heart racing. The soft murmur of the guests faded into a haunting echo as she prepared to take the most significant step of her life. Today was supposed to be the culmination of her dreams, a celebration of love between her and Nathaniel. Yet, a heavy cloud of anxiety hung over her, casting a shadow on what should have been a joyful occasion. In a moment of stillness, Charlotte glanced at Nathaniel, who looked dashing in his tailored suit. His eyes sparkled with excitement, but there was an unmistakable hint of concern etched across his brow. He reached out, squeezing her hand gently. "You okay?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the soft music that played in the background. Charlotte forced a smile, nodding, but the truth was far more complex. "Just a little nervous," she replied, trying to dismiss the gnawing feeling in her stomach. The truth was, her thoughts were consumed by the past, particularly the haunting memory of the day she had left her mother, Agnes, in that nursing home. As the officiant began to speak, Charlotte's mind drifted back to that day how her heart had shattered into pieces while she signed the papers. The look of confusion and sorrow on Agnes's face etched forever in her memory. The image played like a film reel inside her head, and she felt trapped between two worlds, the life she had built and the mother she had abandoned. Just as the officiant was about to ask if anyone objected to the union, the doors at the back of the ballroom swung open with a suddenness that silenced the room. All heads turned, and Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. She could hardly believe her eyes. There, standing in the doorway, was Agnes, looking frail yet determined. Her silver hair was neatly pulled back, and she wore a simple but elegant dress that seemed to shimmer under the lights. The sight of her mother made Charlotte's heart pound violently against her chest. Gasps filled the air as Agnes stepped into the room, clutching a binder tightly to her chest. The atmosphere shifted from celebration to tension in an instant. Guests exchanged whispers, their eyes darting between the bride and the unexpected figure at the entrance. "Mom!" Charlotte's voice trembled, barely escaping her lips. She felt a rush of emotions, shock, anger, and an overwhelming wave of guilt washed over her. Agnes moved slowly toward the altar, her eyes fixed on Charlotte, a mix of resolve and vulnerability in her gaze. Asked, her voice softening. Agnes nodded, her eyes locking onto Charlotte's. "I hope it will. I want you to know that even after everything, I love you. I never stopped loving you." As the tension in the room mounted, Charlotte stood frozen, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The last thing she had expected on her wedding day was to confront the very woman she thought she had left behind. But here they were, standing on the precipice of a moment that could redefine everything. "Charlotte," Agnes implored, her voice trembling with raw emotion, "please let me show you. You deserve to know the truth." In that moment, Charlotte realized that this confrontation was about more than just her mother's past decisions. It was about her own journey toward healing and understanding. With a deep breath, she took a tentative step closer to Agnes, ready to face whatever revelations awaited her. As tension in the air was palpable as Agnes stood at the altar, her hands trembling as she opened the folder she had clutched tightly to her chest. The guests murmured among themselves, their eyes wide with shock and curiosity, while Charlotte felt her heart race uncontrollably. Time seemed to slow down as Agnes finally revealed the contents of the folder. "Charlotte," Agnes began, her voice trembling but firm, "I have something to show you, something you need to see." She unfolded the first document, a legal paper that seemed to carry the weight of a decade's worth of unresolved emotions. "These are the documents that contest your decision to intern me. They prove that you were misled." Charlotte's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, a mixture of confusion and anger flooding her thoughts. "I didn't mislead anyone. I thought I was doing what was best for you." Agnes shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "No, sweetheart. You were manipulated. They told you I would be happier here, that I wouldn't understand what was happening. But look at me now," she said, gesturing around the room, her voice rising with emotion. "I'm here and I understand everything." The room fell silent, the guests transfixed by the unfolding drama. Charlotte's heart raced, and she felt the heat of shame creeping up her neck. "Why didn't you fight back?" she asked, her voice quaking with pent-up emotion. "You could have called me. You could have done something." "I wanted to," Agnes replied, her voice cracking. "But I thought I was protecting you. I thought that if I accepted my fate, it would ease your burden. I believed that you would live your life without the weight of my presence." She leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "I was wrong, Charlotte. I see that now." In that moment, Charlotte felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. "What else do you have, Mom?" she implored, her voice softening as she stepped closer to her mother. "What other secrets are hiding in that folder?" Agnes took a deep breath, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly as she pulled out another document. "This," she said, holding it up for Charlotte to see, "is a letter from your grandfather explaining the family estate. It's been left to you, but you never knew about it. It's a part of our family's legacy, something that connects us." Charlotte's mind raced. "A family estate? But I don't understand. Why didn't anyone tell me about this?" She felt a mix of anger and disbelief, her emotions swirling chaotically. "Because I wanted to protect you from the pain of our family's past," Agnes said, her voice filled with regret. "I thought if you didn't know, you could live your life without the burden of our history. I didn't realize it would only create a bigger chasm between us." As Charlotte stared at the letter, her heart ached with the weight of unspoken love and missed opportunities. "So, all these years, I thought I was living my life to the fullest, but really I was just running away from you, from us," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. Agnes stepped closer, her eyes searching Charlotte's. "I've always loved you, Charlotte. No matter what happened, I never stopped loving you. Even when you left me in that place, I held on to the hope that one day you would come back to me." Charlotte's breath hitched as she absorbed her mother's words. "I didn't know how to come back, Mom. I thought I was doing what was best for me. But now..." She hesitated, the realization of her choices crashing down on her. "Now I see that it was all a lie." Agnes, her own tears now flowing freely, reached out to touch Charlotte's face. You are not alone in this, my dear. We can navigate this together. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself anymore." The room was silent, the guests no longer whispering, but instead watching the poignant exchange between mother and daughter. The air was thick with emotion, and Nathaniel, observing from the sidelines, felt his heart clench in sympathy for both women. He knew this was a turning point for Charlotte, a moment that could reshape her future. As the tension hung thick in the air, Agnes pulled out another set of letters, her hand shaking slightly as she revealed them. "These are from your grandmother," she said, her voice steady now. "Letters filled with love and wisdom, things she wanted to pass down to you. I kept them hidden, thinking they would only bring pain." Charlotte leaned closer, her heart racing with anticipation. "What do they say?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Agnes opened one of the letters and began to read aloud, her voice trembling with emotion. "Dearest Charlotte, if you're reading this, it means my time has come. I want you to know that family is everything. No matter the distance, no matter the pain, love will always find its way back home." As Agnes read, Charlotte felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a connection to the generations of women who had come before her. "I had no idea," she murmured, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "I never knew my grandmother felt this way." Agnes continued, her voice breaking slightly as she read the words of wisdom. "Cherish your loved ones, forgive when you can, and always remember that love is the most powerful force in the universe. It can heal all wounds, even those that seem insurmountable." Charlotte's tears flowed freely as she soaked in the words. Maybe this is what I've needed all along, to understand that love is stronger than my fears. She turned to her mother, the realization dawning on her like a sunrise breaking through a dark night. Agnes nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. "Yes, my dear, it's time for you to embrace that love, to let it guide you back to me." The atmosphere shifted as the guests, who had been held captive by the unfolding drama, began to feel the power of the moment. A collective breath was held as Charlotte took a step forward, her heart racing, her mind racing even faster. "Mom, I want to start over. I want to know you again. I want to reconnect." In that moment, as Agnes looked into Charlotte's tear-filled eyes, she felt a glimmer of hope igniting within her. "I've waited for this day for so long, Charlotte. I never stopped believing that we would find our way back to each other." As the two women stood together, surrounded by the stunned guests, a palpable warmth enveloped them, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could be healed with love and understanding. The documents lay forgotten on the altar as they embraced, the world around them fading away. And for the first time in years, Charlotte felt a sense of peace wash over her. She finally understood that the true inheritance her mother spoke of wasn't just about property or legacy. It was about the bond they shared, the love that had endured through the pain, and the chance to rebuild what had been lost. As the whispers of the guests faded into the background, Charlotte took a deep, tear-filled eyes, had just revealed a depth of love and resilience that Charlotte had never fully appreciated. In the midst of the tumultuous wedding ceremony, surrounded by shocked guests, the chaotic emotions began to settle into something more profound. "Mom," Charlotte whispered, her voice trembling as she searched her mother's gaze for answers. "You have so much to say, and I don't even know where to start." Her voice cracked, the tension of unspoken words and years apart hanging heavily in the air. Agnes took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she held the documents tightly against her chest. "I need you to understand, Charlotte. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment." Her voice was soft but firm, reverberating with the depth of her emotions. "When you made the decision to leave me at the nursing home, I thought I had failed you. I thought I had lost you forever." Charlotte's breath hitched in her throat. The raw honesty in her mother's words struck a chord deep within her, and she felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. "But you were my mother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have been there for you. I should have fought harder to keep you with me." I know, sweetheart, Agnes replied, her voice trembling. But I wanted you to have a life. I thought that if I didn't burden you with my illness, you would find happiness. I didn't want to hold you back. She paused, her eyes reflecting the pain of their shared past. I thought I was being strong, but maybe I was just being foolish. Charlotte felt tears welling up in her eyes as she took a step closer to her mother. You weren't foolish, Mom. You were. You were trying to protect me. I see that now. But I was so wrapped up in my own life, in my own guilt, that I couldn't see what I was doing to you. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her heart aching with regret and longing. I thought I was doing what was best, but I just abandoned you. Agnes reached out, her hand gently touching Charlotte's arm. You were young and you were scared. I don't blame you for that. I only wish I had the strength to reach out to you, to tell you that I was okay, that I was still your mother, even from a distance. Her voice cracked with emotion as she continued. But I didn't want to impose. I thought that by staying quiet, I could let you live the life you deserved. Charlotte shook her head, her heart pounding against her chest. But what about you? You deserve that life too. I didn't understand then that leaving you was never really an option. I should have fought for you. She felt the weight of her past choices crashing down around her, drowning her in sorrow. I should have visited you. I should have taken you home. Agnes stepped closer, her eyes searching Charlotte's face for understanding. Charlotte, I survived. I found ways to cope. I made friends there. I found joy in small moments. I never stopped hoping you would come back for me, but I didn't want you to feel guilty for my situation. I wanted you to live. But I didn't live, Charlotte replied, her voice breaking. I built this life, but it's empty without you. I've been pretending everything is perfect, but I've never felt whole. I thought success would fill the void, but it didn't. It just made me feel more alone. Agnes's heart ached as she listened to her daughter. You've accomplished so much, Charlotte. You built a life, but I see now that it came at a cost. We both lost so much. She took a deep breath, her voice steadying. But it's not too late. We can still rebuild what we lost. The past doesn't have to define us. Charlotte looked at her mother, the realization dawning upon her that Agnes had not only survived but thrived in the face of adversity. What do you mean? She asked, her heart racing with hope. Agnes held up the documents she had brought along, her fingers trembling slightly. These papers, they show that there's more to our story than you know. I've been waiting for the right moment to share this with you. She opened the folder slowly, revealing a series of letters and legal documents. These letters are from your grandfather's estate. He left us a family business, something that could have been passed down to you. It's yours, Charlotte. Charlotte's breath caught in her throat as she processed the revelation. A family business? I never knew. Why didn't you ever tell me? Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments of her family's history she had never understood. I didn't want to burden you with it, Agnes explained softly. I thought you were better off without the weight of family expectations. But now, I see that I should have shared it with you. It's not just about the money or the business. It's about our family legacy. It's about us. Charlotte felt a wave of emotions wash over her confusion, excitement, disbelief. But I built my life on my own. I don't know anything about running a business. What if I fail? Fear crept into her voice, but beneath that fear was a flicker of hope. Agnes stepped closer, her eyes shining with determination. You are so much more capable than you realize. You've built a career. You've navigated the world on your own. This business can be a part of your life, a way to honor our family. But more importantly, it can be a bridge between us, a way to reconnect. She paused, her voice gentle but insistent. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here now, and we can figure this out together. Charlotte's heart swelled with a mixture of gratitude and longing. I've missed you so much, Mom. I've missed having you in my life. I want to learn from you, to understand our family, and what it means to be part of it. She looked deep into her mother's eyes, seeing the love and the shared pain reflected back at her. "I want to make up for lost time." Agnes smiled through her tears, her heart warming at her daughter's words. "We can do that, Charlotte. We can take small steps forward. We can learn together, grow together, and heal together. You don't have to carry this burden alone anymore." In that moment, Charlotte realized that the true inheritance her mother had given her wasn't just about the family business or the documents in her hand. It was about the chance to reconnect, to mend the rifts that had torn them apart for so long. "I want that," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "I want us to be a family again." Agnes nodded, her heart swelling with pride and love. "Then let's start today. The past may hold its pain, but we have the power to shape our future. Together." It was a promise, a commitment, a new beginning. As Charlotte embraced her mother, she felt the weight of years of regret beginning to lift, replaced by the warmth of hope and the possibility of healing. In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of their fractured past, they stood on the brink of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of forgiveness, love, and the exploration of the family they could still become. As the emotional gravity of the moment settled over the wedding venue, Charlotte stood at the altar, her heart racing and her mind swirling in a whirlwind of thoughts. The one celebratory atmosphere had transformed into a profound space of confrontation and revelation. She could feel the collective breath of the guests as they leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected reunion of mother and daughter. Agnes's presence was a stark reminder of the unresolved pain that had lingered in Charlotte's life for the last decade. With tears glistening in her eyes, Charlotte turned to face her mother, the woman she had left behind in an institution, a decision that now weighed heavily on her conscience. "Mom, I don't know what to say," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. The crowd was silent, their eyes darting between the two women, a mix of curiosity and sympathy etched on their faces. Agnes stepped closer, her expression a mixture of vulnerability and strength. "You don't have to say anything, sweetheart. I didn't come here to disrupt your wedding or to cause you pain. I came because I wanted to find my daughter again," she said, her voice trembling slightly but imbued with resolve. "And I have something to show you." She held the folder tightly, as if it contained the very essence of their fractured relationship. Charlotte felt her heart sink, a wave of anxiety washing over her. "What's in there?" she asked, her voice strained with apprehension. She feared that the contents could either deepen their rift or perhaps, just perhaps, serve as a bridge to healing. Agnes took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's about everything your past, our past. I want you to know that you were always loved, Charlotte. Even after I was gone, my love never stopped." She opened the folder, revealing a collection of letters, photographs, and documents that seemed to echo their shared history. The guests watched in rapt attention, as if they were part of a living story that unfolded before their very eyes. Charlotte stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached for the letters. The first one she picked up was dated years ago, filled with her mother's tender words. "I remember this," she murmured, her voice breaking. "You wrote about how proud you were of me." Agnes nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I always was, even when things got difficult between us. I never stopped thinking about you, Charlotte. I just wanted you to have a good life." The sincerity in her voice pierced through Charlotte's defenses, and she felt a crack forming in the wall she had built around her heart. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" Charlotte's voice was edged with hurt, a mixture of anger and longing. "You could have come to see me. I would have wanted you there." Agnes's expression shifted, revealing the weight of her own regrets. "I thought it was best to give you space. I didn't want to intrude on the life you were building. I hoped you would find happiness without me. But I see now that I was wrong." A heavy silence enveloped the room, and Charlotte could feel the weight of shared grief between them. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to process everything. "But you didn't have to go away. I needed you. I still need you," she confessed, her voice breaking. Agnes reached out tentatively, her hand hovering just above Charlotte's, as if afraid to breach the emotional distance that had kept them apart for so long. "I'm here now. I want to be part of your life again. I want to understand everything I missed, and I want you to know me for who I am now, not just who I was back then." Charlotte opened her eyes, her gaze locking onto Agnes's. I don't want to just remember the past. I want to create new memories," she said, her voice gaining strength. "But I don't know where to start." The room remained quiet, the tension palpable, as everyone waited to see how this moment would unfold. Nathaniel, standing a few steps back, felt an overwhelming urge to step in to support Charlotte, but he could sense the importance of this moment between mother and daughter. Instead, he focused on the two women, ready to provide his support if needed, but knowing that this was their journey. Agnes's face softened, and she took a step closer, finally touching Charlotte's hand. "Let's start with honesty. I want you to know everything about my life after you left. I want to share my struggles, my joys, the mistakes I made, and the lessons I've learned. Maybe then you can understand why I did what I did," she said, her voice steadying. Tears streamed down Charlotte's cheeks as she nodded slowly. "I think I'd like that. I think I need that." The weight of the past felt lighter somehow, as if sharing their pain could forge a new path forward. Their moment of connection seemed to ripple through the audience. Guests exchanged glances, some wiping away tears of their own, moved by the raw emotion unfolding before them. It was a reminder of the complexities of family, love, and forgiveness. As Charlotte and Agnes stood there, hand in hand, Nathaniel finally stepped forward, his voice calm and reassuring. "Agnes, I want you to know that I admire your courage to come here today. Charlotte has shared so much about you, and I can see where she gets her strength. I want to support both of you as you navigate this together." Charlotte looked at Nathaniel, her heart swelling with appreciation. "Thank you, Nathaniel. I don't know what I would do without you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. He smiled gently, his presence a steady anchor amid the emotional storm. "You're stronger than you think, Charlotte. And now, it's time to embrace the love that's right in front of you." Charlotte turned back to Agnes, who still held her hand, the warmth of their connection radiating between them. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything, for leaving you, for pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I was a scared kid trying to figure out how to live without you, but I see now that I was wrong to think I could do it alone." Agnes's eyes widened, her heart swelling with pride and love as she listened to her daughter. "Charlotte, you don't have to apologize. We both made choices that hurt us, but what matters now is what we choose moving forward." As the weight of their shared history hung in the air, Charlotte felt a renewed sense of hope. "I want to learn from those choices. I want us to heal together," she said, her voice steady. "I want a relationship with you, no matter how long it takes to mend the wounds." Agnes smiled through her tears, her heart filling with gratitude. "I want that too, my dear. I'm ready to take that journey with you." In that moment, the atmosphere shifted from one of tension to one of profound understanding. The guests, who had been silent witnesses to the emotional reunion, could now sense the palpable bond forming between mother and daughter. Smiles began to break through the tears, and the mood lightened as hope replaced despair. "Let's turn this day into a celebration of new beginnings," Nathaniel suggested, his voice ringing with enthusiasm. "You both deserve that." Charlotte glanced at him, her heart grateful for his unwavering support. "Yes, let's do that," she replied. "Let's celebrate love, forgiveness, and family." The applause that erupted from the guests was not merely for the couple's union, but for the remarkable moment of reconciliation that had unfolded before them. While the ceremony had been interrupted, it had transformed into something more meaningful, a testament to the power of love and the resilience of family bonds. Charlotte and Agnes stood together, hand in hand, ready to embrace the future. As the crowd erupted in applause, the sounds of forgiveness and new beginnings echoing through the grand hall. As the ceremony progressed, The tension in the air shifted, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and unresolved emotions. Charlotte stood at the altar, her heart racing not just from the overwhelming presence of her mother, Agnes, but also from the weight of the secrets that had been revealed. Now, as she faced Agnes, a wave of realization washed over her. She had thought this day would be a simple celebration of love, but it had transformed into something far more profound, a chance for healing and reconciliation. "Charlotte, Agnes began, her voice trembling with emotion. The crowd fell silent, hanging on to every word. "I never intended to disrupt your wedding. I needed you to understand. I needed you to know that I've always loved you." Charlotte's breath caught in her throat. "But you left me." The accusation was soft yet heavy with years of hurt. "You didn't fight for me, for our family. You gave up." Agnes looked down for a moment, the pain of that truth settling between them like a chasm. "I thought I was protecting you. I thought that by letting you go, you would have a better life. I didn't want to be a burden." She paused, her eyes welling with tears. "But it broke me. Every day, I felt the weight of my decision, and I hoped one day you would understand." "I can't believe you let me think I was alone in this," Charlotte said, her voice rising with emotion. "You could have reached out. You could have told me about the love you still had for me." Agnes took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she clutched the folder tightly. "I wanted to, but I didn't want to interfere in your new life. You seemed so happy, and I just didn't know how to fit back into it." She raised her chin defiantly, her voice steadying. "But I'm here now, and I need you to know there's more to this story." The crowd leaned in, captivated. Charlotte felt Nathaniel's presence beside her, a solid support. Yet she felt the walls that had built up over the years beginning to crumble. "What do you mean?" she asked, curiosity mixing with apprehension. With a trembling hand, Agnes opened the folder and began to pull out documents. "These are legal documents regarding our family estate," she said, her voice wavering. "I never wanted to burden you with this, but it seems I have no choice now." She handed over a document, her fingers brushing against Charlotte's as she did. Charlotte glanced at the papers, her mind racing. "What is this? An inheritance?" She looked up, confusion etched on her face. "Yes," Agnes replied softly, "but it's more than just money or property. It's the family business, the one I built before the illness took me away from my life and you. I never told you about it because I thought it was too late for you to care. But it's yours, Charlotte. It always was." Charlotte's head spun. The weight of the unexpected revelation was almost too much to bear. "A business," she echoed, feeling the gravity of her mother's words sink in. "And you never thought to tell me?" "I thought I was protecting you," Agnes said again, her voice breaking. "I thought you had moved on. But this dash," she gestured around at the gathered guests, "this changes everything, doesn't it? Not just the inheritance." Charlotte breathed, slowly beginning to comprehend the depth of what her mother was saying. "It's about us. It's about all the years we lost." "Exactly," Agnes said, her tears flowing freely now. "This inheritance is a chance for us to reconnect. It's a way to build a future together, if you want that. I didn't know how to approach you, but now I see that I have to try." Charlotte looked out at the guests who were all watching, some with tears in their eyes, others visibly moved by the emotional exchange. "I thought I was successful," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought all the luxury and the perfect life would make me happy. But now I see that I've been running from my past, from you, and from who I really am." Nathaniel stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Charlotte's shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone, Charlotte," he said softly. "We can figure this out together, whatever it takes." Charlotte turned to him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. I never thought I'd have to face this at my wedding." Agnes smiled through her tears, a glimmer of hope shining through the sorrow. "Maybe your wedding is exactly the right time," she said gently. "It's a celebration of love, after all, and love can heal even the deepest wounds. In that moment, Charlotte's heart began to open. She realized that the documents in her mother's hands were not just about money or property. They were about legacy, connection, and the possibility of mending broken bonds. "I want to know everything," she said, her voice stronger now, filled with determination. "I want to know about the business, about our family history, and most importantly, I want to know you, Mom. I want us to be a part of each other's lives again." Agnes's expression brightened, a mix of relief and joy washing over her. "You have no idea how much that means to me," she said, stepping closer, her hands trembling as she reached for Charlotte. "I've missed you so much." As Charlotte and Agnes embraced, the audience erupted into applause, moved by the powerful moment of connection unfolding before them. Nathaniel stood by, a proud smile on his face, knowing that this was a turning point for both women. "I can't believe I almost let fear rule my life," Charlotte said, pulling back from the embrace, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to lose you. I just didn't know how to fix it." Agnes cupped Charlotte's face in her hands. "We can fix this together. Let's take this journey one step at a time." Charlotte nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her heart. "You're right. The inheritance is just a part of it. The real treasure is our relationship. I want to learn from you, to grow together." As the applause faded, Charlotte turned to the guests, her voice clear and steady. "I want to thank you all for being here today. I know this hasn't gone as planned, but I think it's turned into something more meaningful than I ever imagined." She took a deep breath, her courage surging. "I've learned that true wealth isn't measured by possessions, but by the love we share and the connections we nurture." Nathaniel stepped forward, taking her hand in his. "And I want to be there for both of you. Together, we can create a future that honors the past." He smiled at Agnes, his respect evident. "I can't wait to meet my future mother-in-law properly." The crowd chuckled softly, the tension dissipating into warmth. Agnes laughed through her tears, and for the first time, Charlotte felt a sense of lightness lifting the weight off her shoulders. As the sun began to set outside, casting a golden glow through the windows of the venue, Charlotte turned to her mother. "Let's make a plan," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "I want to dive into this family business, learn about our history, and truly understand where I come from." Agnes's eyes sparkled with pride. "I would love that," she replied, her heart swelling with hope. "And I want to share everything with you, Charlotte. This is just the beginning." With newfound determination, Charlotte realized that this moment was not just about making amends. It was about building a future filled with love, understanding, and connection. The years lost could never be reclaimed, but the journey ahead promised a chance for renewal, a chance to rediscover each other and redefine what it meant to be a family. As the crowd erupted into cheers once more, Charlotte and Agnes embraced again, this time with a profound sense of promise and hope for the future. They were ready to face whatever lay ahead, together, with Nathaniel by their side, ready to embrace the true meaning of family and love.